Hi, my name is Simo. I'm a Notion certified consultant and software certified expert. In this video, we are exploring how you can use Notion as a data source to build an app without using any code, unless you want to customize the design, using Notion as a data source for managing all the data, and Softr as the front end for building the app and providing access to your app users. In this video, I'm using a personal training app to show you as an example, but the use cases are very wide. For example, you could build a client portal. You could build an internal tool to control access to different stakeholders using Notion with all the centralized data, and then Softr for the front end with your custom domain. So it could be essentially an application that could also be available on mobile as a progressive web app that people can download and have the icon directly accessible from their screen on mobile. So use cases are internal tools, maybe project management or CRMs. It could be client portal. So if you're an agency and you want to give access to your clients to specific projects and tasks that you collaborate on, while you want to keep all the data centralized in your Notion workspace, that's a good use case. In this case, you're looking at a personal trainer app. So say that you are a personal trainer and you want to see all your client data and the training programs and nutrition workouts in a centralized source. In this case, it is Notion, though you can also use Airtable, you can use Google Sheets or any other data source, because now Softr also has a REST API. So you can build any data source or database as the source of your data. In this example, we're using Notion. I also built a template using Airtable in the past, and I will soon release a Notion template for this so that you don't have to build it yourself, but you can simply duplicate the Notion and Softr templates in your own workspaces. So in this example, let's say you're a personal trainer and you want to provide an app to your clients so they can log in, log your workouts, see their progress over time. Maybe you can chat together, exchange comments, and they have access from the app. So you can have many clients from the app, but you have access to all the data across all the clients in one single place that is in Notion. So here is the Notion template that I'm going to use for this. And I'm just going to explain in this video the basics of how to set up Softr with Notion as a data source. And in Notion, you can see there is a clients database. And that's important because clients will store the users of your app. And then there are all the other databases that are all the components that you might have. So you might want to manage invoices to provide them with a easy payment link that they can click and then pay, maybe via Stripe or Lemon Squeezy or any other platform. You will have training programs. So these are the programs that your clients follow. So you can do periodization over time. Each program can have sessions. So these are the training sessions right here. And then sessions are tracked. So a client might track the same exercise over time, multiple times, and see the progression maybe also in a chart on their app when they log in easily. So that's why we have training sessions, we have exercise trackings, and then other databases that are mostly supportive for training movements, nutrition plans, and that's it. The key database that we're going to start with is clients, because that's where all your users are. So as a personal trainer, I would come here, and whenever I have a new client, I would create a page in this database so that the user here would sync into my Softr app, and they can then get easily access to the app. And when I want to archive a client, I can check the archive button and they would be removed or unsynced from the app. To see this in action, let's go to Softr. And here is Softr. And I'm gonna start from scratch to create a new app. And you can see here, I can select what source I want to use for this application. And there are many options. If I click on add another data source, there is a table, Notion, Google Sheet, etc. So in here, I'm going to select Notion. Next up, I'm going to continue. And this will open the authentication flow for Notion. So I'm going to stop the video, do the authentication, and then come back. Okay, authentication is done. I selected the page in my Notion workspace, Personal Trainer OS that I showed you before. And now the Softr app has been created. And there are a few key things to look at. So first there is the pages section on the left-hand side navigation bar. And you can see that some pages were already created. Most of them are default pages that any app usually has. So there is a home page. There are a few lists, so these are not essential really. There is a sign up page. That is important because people need to be able to sign up to the app. Then there is a sign in. So this allows people to log in into the app. And then reset password, forgot password, and the user profile where people can customize the information that they have in their profile at the top right corner when they log in. Then on the left-hand side, there is a theme section. That's where I can define the font across the entire app, the weight of the font, the body, headings, the colors, the the corner radius, or how rounded the buttons and other components are in the app, and I can set other options. Then the first key thing to look at when I build an app like this is the users tab. That's where I start from, because this is where users are managed, where you can see the users that have access to the app, and they are synced automatically from Notion. So if I go to users, I can then sync with data source, and I will select my data source. In this case, it is going to be Notion, the one that I just connected with the personal trainer page with all those components and databases that I showed you. And in here, I know that all my users are in the client's database, and that's why I want to select that. Then I can select what records do I want to sync. Records are each client, which in Notion is called the page. Each row in the client's database is a record. In this case, in Notion terms, it is a page. So if I go here, a record is David Brown, for example. Emily Davies is another record. So Softr allows me to filter specific records if I want. And in my case, I actually want to filter for people where archive is false. I know that archive is a checkbox, so it accepts two values, true or false. In this case, it is false. Okay, and then when a new app user is added, create a matching record in clients. That means if we add a new user from Softr instead of from Notion, that user will be also added to the Notion database. And this is something that I want, so yeah, let's keep it like this. Then we need to map the email. So the email is a required field, otherwise people can't log in, or we can't match their email address when they log in to the app, which is something that we want to do, of course, for validation of the user. So in this case, I'm going to select email. That is a property that I have in the Notion clients database. Next up, I can also populate or map other fields that I want to use in the app. For example, the name, and I can use name for that. The avatar. Yeah, this can be useful actually. So for this, we can add a property in my clients database that is of file type, where we store the avatar of the user. So in here, I'm going to add a new file. Yeah, let's call it a profile picture, just like it is suggested by AI here. I'm going to have profile picture here, move it up, go back to Softr. And here, let's see if it is already refreshed. Yeah, not yet. So I'm going to come up here, refresh the database, and then go back. And I can see profile picture now. And there are other Softr managed fields. If I want to store them in my Notion database, then I can map them here. In my case, I do not need this. Create time, last seen time, the magic link. I want this to just be managed by Softr because these are Softr specific fields. So let's not care about them. And then the final setup here when syncing users is, do I want them to be provided with a temporary password or with a magic link when they forget their password, for example? Then when they click forgot password, how do we handle that? Do we want to send them a temporary magic link so that they can click via email and this will give them access to the app? Or do we want to generate a temporary password and instruct them to change that password later? In my case, I prefer the magic link. So save and sync. Okay, you can see now the data is syncing, and in a few seconds to minutes, we will be able to see users from the client's database directly here in Softr. In the meantime, let's look at other options in the users tab. And the first option is user groups. This allows you to group users in the app. For example, if you have different tiers of clients, as a personal trainer, you might have premium clients that get access to programs and also maybe nutrition plans. Then you might create a group of premium tier, and then you can use that group to restrict access to specific pages within the app. And maybe you can have a second group that is basic tier clients, and those are the people that only pay a lower amount of money to get access to training programs but no nutrition plans. And then you can have restriction in your app based on these user groups. So that's why you may want to create user groups. If instead you do not have these nuances of access or restrictions of data, then user groups might not be useful for you right now. Next up, there is data restrictions. And data restrictions are similar to what I mentioned a few seconds ago with user groups. You can restrict access to specific parts of the app at the global level as opposed to each block within the app. And you can do that here. If you use Notion as a data source, because that's a fairly new data source, you can see that we can't use it in here. So data restriction currently is not supported if you use Notion as a data source. And finally, notifications. This is where you can manage the email sender. So you can use your custom email for sending emails to your clients. You can also automatically send invitations when a user is created. So this means if you create a user in Notion, for example, that will sync to Softr, and that user will automatically receive an invitation to access the app via email. Then you can change the email template. That is under settings, as you can see. And you can change the invite email, the magic link, the email that is sent when someone forgets their password, verification, email, as well as SMS, if you use that. Now, let's get into some other settings and then a specific use case of how you can show data from a Notion database dynamically filtered for that user into the Softr app on the homepage, for example. So the first thing to know is there are some other settings that you can set up in the app. This video is not about Softr as an overview of the tool, so I'm not going to go through them in detail. You just need to know that you can set up a custom domain, so the app is completely customized and people don't know that you're using Softr. You can integrate it with other tools. For example, if you use Stripe to manage payments, you can use Stripe to accept payments and signups via the app directly and then manage user access based on that. You can have a mobile app. You need at least a professional plan for that. And the mobile app is not on the App Store or Google Play Store, but it is a progressive web app, meaning that people can go on their browser in the phone and they will see a download button on your app webpage. If they download the app, the logo of your app will show up on the phone alongside all the other apps. So that's a progressive web app. And you don't need to go through all the checks of the App Store or Google Play Store. You can customize SEO, you can customize the design and functionalities of the app at a more advanced level than what Softr offers using custom code, that is JavaScript, CSS, and HTML, if you like. And then here are some other settings that are not as essential. Now let's go into the pages, and on the home page, let's assume that we want to create a section where people can see their training programs. And we know that in Notion, we have the client's database, and that's okay. And if we open a client page, when I scroll down, I can see there is a training programs relation property that points to the training programs database where we store all the programs across all the clients. And if I also scroll down, there is a view of training programs filtered by that client. So this is dynamic. So how can we recreate this kind of experience and view in Softr? To do that, we can use a block that takes data from the training programs database and filters it for the current user, meaning the logged in user. So that's dynamic based on the user that's logged in. Let's go into Softr back. Let's go back to Softr, and here is the home page. Let's delete this block right there. Let's leave it. Let's actually delete this one as well. I'm going to create a block from scratch. And in Softr, there are some blocks that are dynamic, meaning that they can get data dynamically from your data source. And then there are other blocks that are static, more website-like, where you can build a hero section with an image, for example, like here, a header with an image, some text, a video, buttons. So just with static data. Or we can have dynamic data such as a Kanban view, similar to the Notion board, that you can connect to your data source database so that the data there is dynamic and constantly updated when you make updates in your data source. Then there are containers, and this is a new feature in Softr where you can already pre-organize the design of your app or your blocks into columns, for example. You can have tab containers that allows users to switch between tabs easily, and that can be very powerful from a user experience perspective. In our case, let's create a dynamic block that is a list. So let's go back here, and we see there is a list section where I can use, for example, the grid. So I'm going to use the grid as the list type, and on the right hand side I can configure that list. So I'm going to select data source, that is Notion, and as you can see, we can also use different data sources. So each block can have a different data source. So we can get data from multiple data sources and different apps at the same time in one single application in Softr. When it comes to the database that I want, that is training programs. So I want to show the programs assigned to that client. Next up, I'm going to set conditional filters. And I know that in this block, I only want to show the programs that belong to the logged in user. So for that, I'm going to add a condition that says clients includes any of logged in user. And then here I can select, for example, the name, because the name is the primary key. It's the main field in the Notion database. So that's why I'm using name. If you have a unique ID, you can also use the unique ID. And you can see that user-specific filters are not applied in editing mode. So to see if your filter works properly, you will preview the app. And I'm going to do that later. Next up, I'm going to set the condition of what does the user see if there are no programs. Do we show an empty state message that says no results found? Or do we hide the entire block? In my case, let's do hide entire block. Then I can sort programs, and I want to sort them by date from the oldest to the newest one. And we can have 12 items per page. That's okay. Now, the empty state message, if we are to use the show empty state message, then here we can customize that message. In my case, I use hide entire block, so I do not need the empty state message. Okay, next up, let's name this properly. Naming can be a powerful feature just to keep things organized. So the user doesn't care about this. This is just a software building feature so that you can easily recognize what each block is about. And you can also reference blocks across pages. Let's say my programs. Next up, in the content tab, I'm going to set what content is shown on this grid. So first, I'm going to set the cover image. I don't think there is an image in my database. So for now, let's hide it. Otherwise, I can add a file property to the programs database, and then I can use that as the cover image. In my case, there is no cover. There is no file property in Notion, so I'm not using that. Although from a design perspective, in my experience, it is a good idea to have an image if you're using a grid in Softr. Otherwise, it looks like this, which is fine, though it's a matter of personal preference. So after the cover image, we can have the tags. We don't need this as well, so we can hide it. Then the heading. The heading is that one that shows right there. And in here, I'm going to map to the name. So that's the program name right there. Then we can have a text field. Probably yes. Let's see. It might be a status. And the status might be actually better displayed if we use a tag, so that it also has a bit of a background, an outline right there. We don't need the label because that's clear, that's the status. If I want, I can also customize it a bit in terms of the roundness, which I can also set at the up level, which is a better idea at the beginning. Otherwise, you need to customize each block every time, which is not a good practice. And it can become quite painful when you have many pages and many blocks. So then we can also wrap tags. If they overflow, they're going to be displayed wrapped. In my case, I don't need them because this status is a short field. And then we can use, different colors if we like. We can also use the same colors as in the data source, which I like as an option. So I'm going to keep it like that. Now let's go back. And in here, as you can see, we can add additional fields. So if I want to show, for example, the date, I'll probably do a text type. And that's going to be the start and date. And then I'm going to label it dates. And I can go here, maybe I want to make the label bold. I'm going to do it like that so that it stands out better. And okay, next up there is the search bar. Do I want to have the search bar at the top or not? Right now, I do not want the search bar. Then filters. Do I want to allow users to filter programs? Probably yes, I think that's a good idea. So I'm going to keep it as a drop-down menu. And I can select on the left-hand side like this or at the top. I like filters at the top. It's more similar to the Notion style kind of filters. So the first filter might be the status, for example. Status. So I can name it status. We filter by status. The options are synced from Notion. And I can allow users to select multiple options like that. And for now, that's it. And then these are mobile filter settings. So this is the placeholder because on mobile, things will look a bit different. So if I go to mobile, then I can see here the status. And if I want to preview it, I can preview it on mobile. But for now, let's not get into the details of that. Then there are actions. Actions are things that users can do when using the app. For example, here is an add record button. That's an action. So do you want users to do anything here? I don't want users to add records because I know that training programs are added from the personal trainer in Notion. So I'm going to delete this button. And then we can select if we want buttons either at the top bar, and these are the options: open page, scroll to, open URL, add record, and export as. Or we can have item buttons. So these are buttons that are displayed on each specific program, in this case on each item in the database. So for that, there are also these similar options. And there is also one-click update or download file or delete record, for example. So in my case, I don't want to have any item button, but I do want people to open the details of that program if they click on it. So for that, I'm going to select item on click and I will do open details page. And then I will select the details page. There is no details page yet created. So I will create a details page for the training program. And I can select one of these layouts. I'm going to select this one. That is the newest option available and the one that looks better, in my opinion, compared to the older versions of what you can do with detailed pages. So you can see that this created a new page in my app that I can find under pages. And it is called training program details because it takes data from the training programs database and it displays the details of that program. So in Notion terms, that's the same thing of when you open the program like this. Push-pull-legs is a program. And when I open it, I am inside the detail page of that program. So we are replicating the same experience in Softr. And you can see now I have the block layout. I can display some properties here. And of course, change them. If I go to content, I can decide what properties to display, how to lay them out, I can filter, I can add additional blocks, maybe showing all the sessions of that program. But let's go back to the home page because the principles are the same. So let's continue building this one here. We've added actions, so that's good. And then in styles, we can style the block even more. So there is padding, there is the border, the background color, the cards, how rounded they are, the size, the shadow, and all of these design things that we can customize. For now, let's keep them. And finally, another block option is visibility. So what kind of users can view this block? Either all users, or they could be logged in users only, which is the case in this experience, because I only want logged in users to see their programs. And if I select logged in users, then I can select which user group specifically you can see this. User groups are those components that I explained to you at the beginning of the video, where you can segregate people into groups, maybe depending on the type of client they are or the type of data that you want them to see. In this example app, there is no user group, so let's do all logged in users. And finally, device visibility allows me to customize where I want this block to display. Is it on all device sizes, or maybe only on tablet and mobile, or desktop and tablet but not mobile? Then maybe for mobile I can create a different block that is laid out differently and it is more mobile friendly. So these are all app building considerations that you need to come to terms with when developing an app and making it the highest quality that you can with what you have at your disposal, using Softr as the front end tool with minimal code required. So while that can be an empowerment for many people that do not know how to code, at the same time, it does have some limitations because some things aren't customizable as they could be customizable if you were to use code. So that is something to keep in mind in my experience when it comes to these kind of projects. And finally, to test what the user would see, I will do preview. This will open up a new tab, but I can preview the application in different screen sizes, as well as mocking different users of the app. So that's also helpful for troubleshooting issues. In here, I'm going to select a user, David Brown, let's say, and then I will do I understand, and this will show me what David will see on his app. You can see that's the home page, and I can see here there is a filter by status, and then David can see his program. And it is true that David only has one program, so this is working well, because if I go to Notion, I can see David Brown, that's the page, and there is one program, and then when I scroll down, I can see push-pull legs, so that's the program that's displayed on the Softr app. And that's what David Brown needs to see on the Softr app right now. So then if I'm David, I can see this, and then I can click on it, and this will open up the detailed page of the program. So now, as a personal trainer, if I add an additional program for David in Notion, that will also be displayed on the Softr app for David only. So if I go here, and then I call this program test to David, I'm going to refresh the app, and you can see that the program is now displayed right here, and I can open it normally. So that's what it means to have Notion as a data source in Softr. And this concludes this video. That's a basic overview of how to use Notion as a data source to build a Softr app, both on mobile and on desktop and tablet and any device. If you have questions, leave them down below in the comments. For now, thank you for watching and see you soon.